On Wednesdays, we wear pink. Today's Monday, though. Hi everybody, hope you're doing well. My name is Saajid. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm trying out something that I don't usually do, and that is a monthly TBR. Shut up! I just have some books that I'd like to read this month, like, any month. So original of me. But I'm in the middle of two books that I haven't finished, supposed to finish last month, but of course I didn't finish them. And I also have 4 more books that I am obliged to read this month for different reasons. So I'm going to go through all of them with you right now. So the first book I'm currently in the middle of is Serious Blooms at Night by Shani Muthu. I'm a little bit more than halfway through this one, and I'm really enjoying it. It's set in an alternate reality, I guess, but it's not like science fiction or fantasy or anything like that. It's set on a fictional Caribbean island that is very much inspired by Trinidad, and we're following this guy named Tyler who works in a nursing home, and he's caring for this very vague old woman who doesn't speak, and her name is Mala, and Mala has allegedly been accused of murdering her father, so nobody else in the home really wants to get near to her, none of the other nurses, but Tyler is the only one who seems to take an interest in her because he feels the same way as her, in the sense that he's also been somewhat of an outcast for his entire life because he's gay. So he takes an interest in her, and then he ends up learning her story. So the book is told in 2 different time periods. We're following Mala throughout her life. We're getting her background and her backstory and all of her flashbacks and whatnot. And then we're in the present, where we're following Tyler as he's taking care of her, but also coming to terms with his own sexuality and gender expression. This book is amazing so far, and I could tell why everybody who, is into Caribbean literature, I could tell why they absolutely love this book. From the moment I read Valmiki's Daughter earlier this year, which was one of Muthu's other books, everybody was telling me you need to go back and read Serious Blooms at Night, and I'm so glad that I did, because this book is just amazing. I mean, Shani Muthu's writing alone is stunning. The way that she describes, it reads like such a love letter to Trinidad. Even though this book is not really set in Trinidad, it's set in a fictional equivalent to Trinidad, it still reads like a love letter. And when I was reading Valmiki's Daughter, I enjoyed that sense of description and surrounding, but it's even more obvious here, because this book has this underlying theme or aesthetic of plants and foliage, and Shani Muthu seems to be very interested in plants, y'all, and the way that she describes plants and nature and all the bugs and the insects and everything. I mean, I know that's not the main part of the story, but I really enjoy that. It really makes for just a very Caribbean read, and I'm enjoying it quite a lot, so I'm looking forward to finishing this one. I'm also 100 pages into Map of Salt and Stars by Zine Jukader. Now, if you get an earlier edition of the book, just note that the author did change their name from the name that is printed on the copy of the book. But I am really enjoying this story so far. It's a story, but there's also a story within a story, and I love when that happens. So basically, the main premise is that we have this girl. Her name is Noor. I forget a girl name. Her name is Noor. She was born in Syria, but she grew up in New York City. But when her father tragically dies of cancer when Noor is around 12 years old, her mother decides to move the family, Noor, her, and the 2 older sisters, back to Syria. And while they're there, life is fine for a while, but then some instability starts to happen in their community, and they end up having to flee to other countries across the Middle East and North Africa. And it's really about how Noor is dealing with that as a young girl who does not have to and should not have to go through those things. On top of all of that, there's a story within the story. So there's a story of a woman who I believe is pulling a Mulan. I didn't realize at first, but I think that's what she's doing. She's going on a quest with this map maker, this epic quest throughout the Mediterranean and North Africa to look for something. And so she's on this quest, and she's pretending to be a man, and it's a story within the story. So it's a story that Noor is telling herself. And I really like that story, and the writing in that story is so different, right? Because with Noor's perspective, you get that kind of angsty 12-year-old voice. It's still really beautiful, and it doesn't read like a YA or anything. But when we get into Rawia's perspective, it's almost like you're reading one of those tales from Arabian Nights. It's so good. And I'm listening to the audiobook whilst reading along with the physical copy, and the narrator is doing an excellent job. So I'm having a really good time with this book as well. And again, I do look forward to finishing it. Now on to the 4 books that I am obliged to read this month, that I have to read for things, and I'll explain those things. So the first book I have to read for Bashment Book Club, which is a Caribbean book club that I host with Paige and Linnell. This month we are reading The Star Side of Bird Hill by Naomi Jackson, which I was supposed to read for the Reading Rush, which we're not going to talk about the Reading Rush because didn't read anything. It's fine, you know, my TBR video is only like my second most viewed video of all time, and I didn't read any of the books that I said that I was going to read. Actually, I did read one, From Here to Eternity. I read that, so it wasn't a complete failure. But anyways, we're not talking about the Reading Rush, we're talking about Bashment Book Club. So this book is set in Barbados in 1989. We're following two sisters who are from Brooklyn. Their parents are... Their parents are Bajan, and they decide to send these two girls back to Barbados to spend the summer of 1989 with their grandmother. I really need to pierce my nose. And I believe it's a coming-of-age story about these two girls, I guess, connecting with their grandmother. That's pretty much all I know. I know Jeraine from Rebel Woman Lit loves this book, so hopefully I will love it too. She has great taste in Caribbean literature, so hopefully I don't dislike it. And make sure to go over and subscribe to Paige's channel, Paige from Minimal Bookie. We will be having the live show on her channel, which is very fitting because Paige is also Bajan. Okay, so the next three books that I'll be reading this month are all science fiction and fantasy, which y'all know I don't fucks with the science fictions or the fantasy. Well, actually, I do like science fiction sometimes, but I don't really go down the fantasy realm that much. So this is kind of like a little leap for me, but I'm really looking forward to these three books, and they've been books that I've been interested in reading for quite a long time. So I'm glad to finally have copies of them, and I'm glad to finally get around to them. So the first book, I guess, is science fiction. It's called Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, and I'm reading this as part of the Octavia E. Butler slow read. So if you don't know, it's basically like a read-along that takes place over the course of the next 2 years, where Njeri, Musical Tati, and somebody else, I can't remember their name, they're hosting this read-along where over the next 2 years they're going to be reading basically all of Octavia E. Butler's books in order of publication, and this is her first book, so this is the first book that they'll be reading. It's set in the 1970s, it was published in the 1970s, and it follows a Black American woman named Dana who is sent back in time, back to the, I think it's the 1800s, sometimes in the 1800s, when slavery was still legal in America, and she realized the reason why she is being sent back in time is because she has to save this white slave owner man, because I think that man is actually her great, I don't know how many greats, but her great grandfather, right? He would go on to rape her great grandmother, and if that doesn't happen, then Dana and all of the people who are the descendants of those two individuals will cease to exist, essentially, which is very dark and very grotesque, and I know a lot of people don't like this book for that reason, but I think it's a story that's meant to be confronting of the past and understanding how slavery did lead to rape, and the abuse of Black women's bodies by white men during slavery was a thing that happened. But I think that's kind of what the book is supposed to do. It's supposed to kind of make you confront that reality. So I do look forward to reading it and seeing, you know, what it's about. I know a lot of people really enjoy this book. Some people don't, understandably, given the content, but I'll see what I think of it. But I'm really glad to be participating in the Octavia E. Butler read-along, and if y'all want to participate in that, please do. I will leave in Jerry's announcement video in the description down below. Next up, I'll be reading a book that I'll be buddy reading with my friend Sai from Zania Anomaly, as well as Sai's friend and now my friend Uday, and we will be reading together The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. So The Poppy War is the first in a adult fantasy trilogy. Now, y'all know I don't read adult high fantasy like at all. The first and last adult fantasy I ever read was Uprooted like 4 years ago, so this is going to be like a whole new experience for me, really, but I'm very much looking forward to reading this. I think it is a retelling of the, I don't know what it's called, I think it's called the Sino-Japanese War, or it's a war that happened in East Asia, and this is a Chinese fantasy, so this book is kind of retelling that war, but with a fantasy twist, and I really look forward to that. I think it's going to be a really good time. I've heard excellent things about it. All of my booktube friends, Jessie, Mayana, Noria especially, are always raving about how good this book is. Andrew really likes it. I think R recently read it and they really liked it, so I'm really looking forward to jumping into this one and seeing what I think of it. I don't know the details of the plot, but I know most of y'all love this book, so hopefully I love it too. And then the final fiction book that I have on my TBR for this month is one that was sent to me by Flatiron Books in exchange for an honest review. Thank you so much to Flatiron Books for reaching out to me and sending this to me. It's so, like, I felt special. I felt like, oh my god, I'm an influencer. So the book is called Mirage by Somaiya Daud. And this is a book that's been out for quite some time. You might recognize the original cover of this book, but it's since been, like, I guess, like, republished, has a new edition and whatnot. And I love this cover. It is absolutely stunning. I love the girl on the cover. I love the colors. It's really pretty. This is a mix of science fiction and fantasy from what I heard. And it is a Moroccan-inspired fantasy. So it's set in either in Morocco or in, like, a alternate universe version of Morocco. And our main protagonist, her name is, what's her name again? Yeah, I forget everybody's name. I think her name is Amani, right? So Amani bears a striking resemblance to the princess of her kingdom, area, place, I don't know. So she's kidnapped and used as a body double for the princess. And that's pretty much all I know about it. But I'm just really excited to be reading more books, especially more science fiction and fantasy from Muslim authors, because Somaiya Daud is Muslim, even though I don't know that this book has anything to do with, like, Islam or Muslims or anything like that. But I'm really looking forward to diving into this one. The second book comes out this month if it hasn't already come out. It's called Court of Lions. So if I like this one, I'm definitely going to check out the second book. Maybe not this month, but at some point I probably will. And that's pretty much it for what I'll be reading this month. I do have some nonfiction planned this month that I would like to get to. Some nonfiction particularly for school. I'm not really going to talk about that, but there is one nonfiction book that I'll be reading for fun called Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Caitlin Doughty. I have this on audio now. If you recall, I read From Here to Eternity last month. I talked about it in my July wrap-up, and it was just one of the best reading experiences that I've had for the year, so I definitely want to go back and read all of Caitlin books. I think she has like 3. So this is her first book, and it's a memoir of the time when she worked in a crematory. And if you didn't know, Caitlin is a mortician. She has a whole YouTube channel called Ask a Mortician. I was like praising her in my last video. So if you haven't gone over to check out her channel as yet, I don't know what you're doing. But yeah, really looking forward to jumping into this one and seeing what it's all about. And as I'm listening to the audiobook, it'll be really cool because I'll just be hearing Caitlin's voice because I think she narrates the audiobooks. So it'll just be like watching like one really long Ask a Mortician video without the visuals. But I'm sure it'll still be just as good. And that is pretty much everything that I plan on reading this month. In the comments, I would love to know if you've read any of these books, if you have any thoughts on them. Thank you all ever so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely day. And until next time, inshallah, keep reading.